See the hover effect is here. Clicking on the GUI, we get the fired and the picked up. You heard the sound was there as well, and I've got a little cool effect for my GUI when you hover. So we're ready to close this again. See, it goes up and then it tweens down. Okay, so to get started, what you need is you need a menu GUI with a sound effect, and then you need your main GUI, and you need some sort of way to open up the GUI, and it has to be a button. Then you need, inside replicated storage, you need a book system folder, and you need to add 2 bindable events. So usually you would do remote events, but this time we have to use bindables because basically I've set up this example right here, very beautiful. This first logo up here is the bindable event, and this down here is the remote event. So bindable is basically, let's start with the remote. So remote events is basically from C, so from the client to the server. So you send something from the client to the server, or you send something from the server down over to the client. So that's why you use on server event and on client event. And you can fire server, fire client, fire all clients. But basically you can't do that for bindable events, but for bindable events you speak from client to client. So you can basically speak from client to client, and you can do it from server to server as well. But you cannot do from server to client, for example. You'd have to use a remote event for that. So if you want to speak with a local script to another local script, like an event, you would have to use a bindable and not a remote event. The folder book system and had 2 bindable events, one called tween bind invisible and tween bind visible. God, that's hard to say. So invisible and visible. Then you would have your GUI. So for my case, I have this sound effect, which basically flips the book. Then I have my main book. So if I go ahead and make this visible, this is a book GUI from a game I am working on right now. And then we have this button, which is a frame. So it won't be able to actually have the mouse button one click. So I have an empty button that's just like overed. So I have this button, it's invisible. So if I turn background, you see the button is like this. So even if you don't hit it exactly, it will open up this one. But this is just for opening up the GUI. If you want it to be more exact, what you can do is you can add the UI corner, and then you can just make this UI corner like 1,0, and then yeah, as you can see now, it's like much more dense, like inside of the actual thing, and then you can turn it back to 1. Okay, so now that this is done, we can actually get started scripting. Last thing we need to do inside server player scripts is we add a folder called tweening book, and then we add a local script inside of this. And also inside the menu, you just want to add a local script. And this menu script, I'm gonna call menu handler, and this local script I'm going to call tweening handler, or just tween handler actually. So inside the menu handler, we need to define a few things. So first of all, we want to let everything load in. So we wait 3, say let everything load in. It's just to let the scripts load in the services and stuff that we need to get. So like our variables. So adding on to that, we want to add our variables. Variables. There we go. And in here we need to get our book, which is our main frame. So for my case, it's a book. And that will be the script.parent, which is the script's parent, which is menu. And then we can just find it, so .book. So that is our book. And then we need to find our opener, which is how we're going to open the book. And we're going to call this the parents wait for child. And this is the open book button. So this is the actual button that is used to open, not the actual like frame itself. If you just have one button, you would just define it like this. You don't need to have a frame. It's just I do in my case. Then we need to get the player, so game.players.local player. Then we need to get the book sound, which is going to be inside the script.parent book sound. And then we need to get the frame. So I'll just call this cool frame. equals to script.parent.coolFrame. So this is actually our like frame, like our opener frame, not the book itself. And then we need to add a cooldown slash a debounce. I like to call it cooldown, but you can call it whatever. Then we need to get our remote events. Actually, in this case, it's the binables. Oops. So we'll call the first one local tween visible B, and local tween invisible B. So tween visible B is just the tween visible binder, and then IV is the invisible one. Just to shorten it down, but you can do whatever you want. So I'm gonna do game get service replicated storage dot book system, and then since this is the visible one, I'm gonna do this one. You wanna just copy this and do the in tween. Oh, right, forgot to add a game over here. The tween invisible. Okay, so now we have defined the visible and the invisible bindables. And you might be wondering, why do we need this bindables? Well, it's because this script is a local script, and then we need to communicate with the tween handler inside the startup player scripts. So that is why we are using bindables and not remote events. So anyways, we can now do our first functions, which is going to be a nice smooth hovering function. So the way we do this is we make a new function, call it tween coolFrame enter. Long name, but this is what we need. We're gonna end this off, and then we're gonna copy this function because we need it to when it's leaving again. And the way we're gonna trigger once the player's mouse is over the thing is we're gonna make a start size and a hover size. So inside this one, because we want it to spread out, we want it to hover, then we're gonna say local hover size equals to UDIM, to UDIM 2.new, and then we're gonna give it some values in a second. And then down here we're gonna use the local start size. This is the actual size of the thing right now. So the size of my thing is 0.05, 0, 0.9, 0. That's the size of mine right now. And then we want this to basically just get a bit larger than the actual start size. So I'll do 0.06, 0.1. Comma, not point. But basically we just need it to be a bit bigger than the actual start size. So basically what it's going to do, the hover size is just going to scale it a bit up. And the way we scale it smoothly up is using tween service. So using tween service on a frame is pretty simple. Basically just do the cool frame. And then there's an option called tween size. So tween the size. It takes in the end size, which is our hover size, and then easing direction, easing style, time it's gonna take, an override boolean, and then you can also call a callback function. So it's gonna say it up here. So first of all, we need to give the end size. So the end size is going to be the hover size. The enum direction is gonna be enum easing direction. Easy direction, sorry. And then we're gonna give it out. You can do in or in out. I'm gonna do out. And then you can do enum the easing style. And in my case, either gonna go for linear. I'm actually gonna go for sine. I want it to take 0.25 seconds, so like a fast, smooth. And do we want it to override? Yes. I want it to override the actual start size. So basically you just cover this down here, the end size, because now you gotta think of it like this. So now that now it's hovered, when they leave we should set it back to the start size. So the end size is actually going to be the start size for this one. You know, the end size is what we're going to give over here. So we're going to give it the start size. I know this is a bit weird, but basically just think of it as this is the start size right here, and this is the hover size. Currently, when they leave or put their mouse on the frame, then this is going to be the actual size of it. And now we want it to tween smaller again, so we just have to basically say that the end size, the size we want to tween to, is going to be the small one again. So essentially, so what this means for us is that we need to set the start size as the end size. Bit weird. We can just, if you want to change these, we can, but I'm just gonna leave these as true. And the numbers that we had from before. And now we need to connect the function top to our event. So I'm gonna do cool frame dot mouse enter connect, and then we're gonna connect. So when they enter the mouse, we're gonna connect that to the tween cool frame enter. And down here, we're gonna do mouse leave. Connect that to the tween cool frame leaving. So whenever they leave, this is gonna be true. And whenever they leave, whenever they hover over the part, then it's gonna get bigger. And whenever they stop hovering over the part, it's gonna get smaller. So that's a little cool hovering effect. So now we need to actually get to our book function, which is the function for opening up the book. And the way we do this is we make a function. I'm gonna call this show book. And then inside this function, we need to check if our debounce is false. And you know, we set it to false in the beginning, or our cooldown. So we're gonna say if not cooldown, which same as saying if cooldown is equals to false, then. So if it's false, aka ready to run. So if there's no cooldown, then we want to check, and this is nesting, if you know what nesting in code is. I would recommend not using this, but in my example, I'm using nesting. If you can avoid nesting, that's good for your system. Nesting is basically just saying a bunch of if statements. So you see, I already have one if statement, and then now I'm also going to check if the book.visible, then if book is visible. So this is nesting, but in our case, this is okay. So essentially what we're doing here, we're telling the script, so if there's no cooldown, if we're ready to run the system, run the function, then we will check if the book is visible. So if the book is already visible, we want the book to disappear when we click on the button again. So the way we do this is we get our bindable event. So we're gonna say tween. Actually, we're gonna see what we called them. So we called them TVB. So because it's visible, we want it to become invisible. So we'll call the invisible binary. And the way you use binary, you don't say fire client, for example, like this. You just say fire. So this fires the event. And then we have to make sure that after this is fired, we will set the cooldown. Oops, cooldown equals to true. So now there's a cooldown right now, so you can't run the script again. You can't just press the function, because now when we press the function, after we press it once, if you do it again, then if not cooldown, then it is gonna be a cooldown. So you can't, this code underneath won't run as long as cooldown is true. And then we need to set the book sound. I'm just gonna set the volume to 0.4. We don't want to be as loud as when we open it. So, and then we're gonna play the book sound underneath. And basically now we're checking if it's visible. Else, because if it's not already visible, then we have to make it visible. So we're gonna say TV, I think we call it TVP, yeah, fire. And then we're actually in the first one as well, we're gonna give it the parameter of what we want to fire it to. So we want to fire it to the player. So, and player is the variable up here, that's just the local player. So we want to fire this script, or this other bindable. Then we need to set the cooldown to true, because now they have pressed on it. We need to make sure that the book sound volume is a bit louder than before, so I'm going to do 0.5, and then we're just going to play the book sound again. Then we are going to do task.wait 2, and after 2 seconds we're essentially gonna set the cooldown to false. So after 2 seconds we can run this again, And I'm gonna do this up here as well. So I'm gonna say task.wait 2. Oops, 2. And then cooldown equals to false. So then you can, run it again. Okay. So now that this is done, we actually have to connect an event to run this function, because right now it's just show book, and you can just run this if you want, like this show book, but then it's just gonna run the function when it gets to line 55. So we actually want the opener, which is the button, that mouse button, one click, connect, and then we connect this to the show book. Sweet. Okay, so now every time we press on it, then we will fire this event. But this, except for the hovering function, won't actually do anything on its own. What we need to do is inside of the tween handler, we need to connect some of our code. So we first of all have to get the bindables, of course. So I'm actually just gonna copy this in. I'm gonna wait 3 seconds like last time. I'm gonna say let everything load in. Then I'm gonna get the bindables. And we also have to get the tween service. I'm gonna say service. I'm gonna say local tween service equals game get service tween service. So inside the script is actually where we're gonna handle the tween, as it says in the name, tween handle. So for that we need the tween service itself. Then we need to get the player variables. So we're gonna get the local player like last time. Game.players.local player. And then we want to get the player GUI. If you don't know what player GUI is, then I'll quickly explain it to you, but I recommend you go read about it. So basically in Roblox Studio, how the starter GUI works is that whatever we have inside of the starter GUI, whenever we press play, then you know how the clone function works. The game is going to clone whatever we have in here into something inside our player. Actually, I think it's above this player scripts called player GUI. So it's gonna clone this into the player GUI. But that means if we change something in the original starter GUI, it won't actually happen to this one up here, because that was just a clone that we did before changing it. So if we want to change something, like showing the book and removing the book again, then we have to change it in the player GUI. So that is why we're getting this one and not the starter GUI. Now we have to get the book variables. So the way we do this is we just get the book like last time. So we'll say, so as I just explained, we need to get the book real time and not in the start GUI. So we'll say player GUI, player GUI, wait for child, and sorry, I inserted. I think we called it menu book. You see, it won't actually show up now, like when I'm typing it. That's because this is not like a thing right now, because it only clones it when we run the game. So right now the game can't find this player GUI menu book thing, so it won't actually show up in our feed. So we have to make sure that we spell everything completely correct when we talk about this one. So book dot so we'll say udm2.new, and then we set our book to be 0.5, 0, 1.5, 0. So this is the book's position. Then we have to get the book.visible, so if it's visible. And in this case, we just wanted to make sure that it is not visible. Make sure it's invisible / not visible. Because, of course, we don't want it to be visible. So this will just run, and just in case we got to leave it invisible, then this will make it invisible. Okay, so now we actually can go for the main function of this script. So we actually have to connect these binaries up here to a script now. The way we do this is we say tvb. So let's start with the visible .event. So whenever you work with binaries, then it's just called .event. We connect this to a function. We don't give it any parameters, so we don't need to give it any parameters. And then inside this one, we have to make sure that book.visible is true. We have to set the book tween position. And now what we can do is we can give it some, numbers, some information. So first of all, we want to tween it to the desired position. So for the udm2.new, which is the position of the GUI that we wanted to go to, 0.5, 0, 0.5, 0, which is the middle of the screen. Actually, it's not the middle of the screen. It's more like over here where our book we want our book to go. And then what we can do here is we can, next up, we have to give it the easing style first, or the easing direction actually. So it won't work if you put the easing style first. You have to give it the easing direction first. So I'm going to use in and then easing style. So the style of it is going to be back. The time it takes, I'm going to say 1.5. So time it takes. And we need to add a comma to this one, and we need to add a comma to this one. And then we will say, I think the next one is boolean of, if it will loop. So we don't want it to loop over, so we just say false. We'll actually just close this off here. And I don't know why time it takes is going down here. We just want it to be here. Delete this. Okay. So after the 0.5 seconds and we made it false, we want to wait 1.5. So we wanted to wait this actual time. So if you change this to 2, you would change this to 2 as well. And then we will make it invisible again. So we'll say book.visible equals false. Actually, I don't have to do this here because this is the visible function. We have to do this in the next one though. So I'm just gonna copy this code. And I want to change this to out as well. And I want to do in on the next one, so it gives like a little bounce effect. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So now we have to do TVI TIVB dot event connect function, no parameters, book, and then tween position, and then I will give it the position that we want it to go away from. So we'll say the same position as 4, but we just want to do 1.5, so it'll go out of the screen. And then we'll give it the easing direction first, and we'll call it in this time, because that's going to give the little bounce effect when it goes away. And we do enum.easing style. Will be back again. This back is pretty nice. We'll say it takes 1.5 seconds, and we'll set the looping boolean to false here at the end. Then we'll wait the desired time as before, so 1.5, and then we'll set the book's visibility to false. And now that we have all of this added, it should actually link up to the script just fine. So unless I did a spelling mistake somewhere, then this should work. So I'm gonna save the game real quick. So publish to Roblox, and we're gonna make sure that our book is invisible, and we're just gonna close this off. And if it's visible, it doesn't really matter, because we check in the menu handler, we check that the book visibility, and then we make sure it's false. So let's go ahead and run this. Give it a little try. So we go ahead and we click on the button, and actually before we click it, you can see the little hover effect. When we hover in, when we hover out, clicking on it, nothing happens. So we have got some kind of error here. So I'm gonna go debug this, and I'll see if I can find the error. Okay, so little update. I changed the task away to waits because I thought that was the issue, but that is not the issue. So we're just gonna add test await again. Inside the tween handler, I added some prints to check the bindable pickups. So we should see 2 bindable prints and 2 bindable pickups. And the reason why is because where it says if not cooldown, it says it's not if not cool frame. So we're supposed to say cooldown, and if not cooldown means if it doesn't exist, but it does exist, so therefore the function won't run. So updating this, and let's pray that this works now. Let's wait the 3 seconds out, and see the hover effect is here. Clicking on the GUI, we get the fired and the picked up. So yeah, we fired this bindable, we picked up this bindable. It's 1 and 2, it's messed up, but it doesn't really matter. You heard the sound was there as well, and I I've got a little cool effect for my GUI when you hover. So when ready to close this again, see it goes up and then it tweens down. So that's all for this tutorial. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you in the next video. Like and subscribe. Bye bye.